Hi guys, welcome to Energise Coaching. Here we're going to take a look at an exercise called a high pull, and this targets the rear shoulders or the posterior deltoids. Now there's a number of different ways you can execute this exercise. I'm going to show you a couple today, but before we get into that, firstly let's talk about the accessories. Now one that you'll see used a lot is a single rope. Now the downside to this is that if you're quite a broad person, it's going to be a little bit restrictive with how far you can bring your elbows back. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm fine for the first 2/3 of the movement, but here I'm really struggling to get my rear delts involved, okay? So that's no good for me. So what we can do is bring that rope through, bring another single rope in, attach that to the cable, and now, boom, we've got a longer rope, okay? So we can now get loads of clearance there with the elbows. So that's a good way around it. Depending on what gym you're at, you might have the availability of one of these. Now these are Vulcan straps, and as you can see, gives you a couple of handle options. Okay, so I take the longer ones, and that works really well for me, just to allow me to access that range of motion. Okay, so let's talk about the rear shoulders. We need the elbows to come back at a very high line there. Okay, anything down here is going to be working the muscles in the back, and we don't want to be doing that. We want to keep the elbows up, so they come up, and we're keeping the elbows high throughout that range. Okay, now, if we're doing these standing, I'd advise you to use a split stance, because we're relying on our own stability here. So we need stability to come from the lower body. We also need stability to come from the midsection, torso and core. Okay, so a standing version, we're there, we're leaning back, and I'm keeping my elbows high and driving back through. Okay, now if I do a few reps of this, I want you to see how there's no movement at all throughout the body other than from the muscles that we're targeting. Okay, and in my mind, and I'm imagining something here that I've got to keep my arms over. Okay, so that's a standing high pull. If possible, I would rather you do these seated, because that'll give you more stability from an external source, and in this case, we're going to use a bench. So I'll show you what I'll do here. Okay, so I'm going to bring the bench in. Now the great thing about the bench is that we can use the arms of the bench to brace against. And here, I don't have to worry about stabilizing the legs. I don't have to worry about stabilizing the hips. And I can purely focus on what I'm doing in those rear shoulders. So neither option is right or wrong. If we can use the bench, use it. We can brace against it, and it will give us that stability we need. If there's no bench there, it's not the end of the world. We do the standing option, and we make sure that we stabilize internally. So using the legs, using the core, making sure that torso isn't moving. Okay, so that is the high pull.